So, shalom to everyone. I hope you had a meaningful Purim. Uh, for you, it was already last week. For Jerusalem people, it was still on Sunday. So, I'm still with the impression of Purim, um, and it's very nice to see all of you. And we're moving straight forward to uh, to the next big event that is approaching very fast. Um, I'll just say again that anyone who feels comfortable to open their camera, it would make my teaching experience much better. So even if you don't care, for me, maybe someone would like to open it, but don't feel obligated. Um, so we're facing a very distinguished Shabbat ahead. Um, it has a name. Does anybody know what the name of the next parasha is? Not only the weekly parasha, but the special reading that we will read this Shabbat. Does anybody know?
Vayechel or something like that.
Vayakhel is the name of the weekly parasha, but we're going to read a special parasha also this Shabbat. This Shabbat. Does anybody know?
Barak.
Thank you. Yes, para. Para. So we're continuing with the third of the four special parshiyot that we are reading between the beginning of the month of Adar and Pesach. And if any of you doesn't know what I'm talking about, it's a good time to review the halachot of the times of Purim and Pesach because it's important to know we have four parshiyot. That means that while we are reading the weekly parasha every Shabbat, we're not repeating the end of the parasha in the last aliyah in the maftir like we usually do. That we read 7 parts of the parasha and then the eighth part, the eighth aliyah, when someone comes up to the Torah and blesses the Torah, at the eighth time, we're repeating the last part of the last aliyah. A few psukim, usually it's maybe 3 psukim or 5 psukim of the last aliyah. I won't explain now why. If you missed this piece of knowledge, try to look it up. But for these 4 parshiyot, for these 4 weeks, uh, instead of repeating the end of the last aliyah during the reading of the Torah, we will get out another book, another Torah scroll, and read a different parasha. So we started with Shkalim, reading about the half a shekel that every Jew must bring. That was the Shabbat right after Rosh Chodesh Adar, right after the beginning of the month of Adar. Then on the Shabbat right before Purim, we read Shabbat Zachor, the obligation to eradicate Amalek. And Shabbat Zachor is actually famously an obligation from the Torah to hear it. And now we have two Shabbatot left, one after the other. Shabbat of Para, reading the instructions of how to make a golden calf. A golden calf, a red heifer. And then the Shabbat, which marks the Shabbat before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, before the first day of Nisan, we're reading Parashat HaChodesh. We're reading the parasha where God uh, 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 explains to Moshe how to declare the beginning of the month in the context of getting out of Egypt. So those are the four parshiot, and now right after Purim, we're approaching the third one, the parasha of Para, which is actually, for some opinions, this is also an obligation from the Torah. Zachor is famously an obligation from the Torah, and in many communities, I'm sure that it also in yours, um, they made a big deal out of it to come, even if you don't feel well, to hear, to listen to the reading. In many communities, they read the parasha of Zachor again after the prayer for anyone who missed, and you must listen to every note and every letter that is expressed in the most in the most clear voice. But for many opinions of the rabbis, also para has the same statue, that it's also an obligation from the Torah, and it's very important to go and listen to it. So since this class is a class of Midrash, we will read the parasha of Para very very fast, and then we will go into a bit of what the sages say about Para. Okay, so can I share? Am I allowed to share? Yes, I'm allowed. Okay. Oh, I see that it's a bit blocked, right? There's black all over, right? No, you see everything clearly? Say yes, no? Yes. Okay, very good.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you. So this is the parasha from the Torah. Um, and let's go over it quickly. Does anybody want to read the parasha in English or in Hebrew?
I can read in English.
Please, thank you.
The red heifer, between purification and submissiveness.
Yeah,
God
that's not
spoke.
the parasha, that's me. So
That's
don't, that's not,
okay. Sorry.
that's not God, it's me. Only
Okay.
me.
God spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, "This is the ritual that Hashem has commanded. Instruct the Israelite people to bring you a red cow without blemish, in which there is no defect and on which no yoke has been laid. You shall give it to Eleazar the priest. It shall be taken outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Eleazar the priest shall take some of its blood with his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. The cow shall be burned in his sight. Its hide, flesh, and blood shall be burned, its dung included, and the priest shall take cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson stuff, and throw them into the fire, consuming the cow. The priest shall wash his garments and bathe his body in water. After that, the priest may re-enter the camp, but he shall be impure until evening. The one who performed the burning shall also wash those garments in water, bathe in water, and be impure until evening. Another party who is pure shall gather up the ashes of the cow and deposit them outside the camp in a pure place, to be kept for water of lustration for the Israelite community. It is for purgation. The one who gathers up the ashes of the cow shall also wash those clothes and be impure until evening. This shall be a permanent law for the Israelites and for the strangers who reside among them.
Thank you. So this is a description, it's not the whole description, a description of how to become pure from extreme impurity. And I'm sure that none of you has really gotten into the laws of impurity, since it's not so relevant today. Since the destruction of the temple, we're not practicing the laws of impurity, but this is a major part of the Jewish law in the times of the temple, or from the times of receiving the Torah. And there are many things that make you impure in different levels, and there are many ways to become pure once you became impure, and there's a way to become pure for every level of impurity. And those are very, very sophisticated laws. I must say that as much as we know, already in the times of the temple, most Israelites did not follow the laws of purity, because basically you can have a life of impurity. Uh, you're not doing any sin by being impure. The only thing you can't do is enter the temple. So for Israelites who would live somewhere in the land of Israel or in the diaspora, if they didn't come to the temple very often, it almost wouldn't have been an issue for them. But there were always Jews in many communities who would still keep the laws of purity, and they would be called chaverim, which nowadays is the word for friend. But in those days, chaver meant someone who kept the laws of purity. And I won't go into even the basics of the law. You can look it up. If you want a clear explanation, you can look up the Rambam, Maimonides, who explains those things in a very orderly way. But the highest level of impurity is impurity of death, meaning someone who touched a body or someone who was connected to a body in different specific ways. He cannot be purified by water, by going to the mikveh. He must have a para aduma. He must have a red heifer. And this is the source to explain how you are making the I don't know, the material, the I don't know even how to call it, the thing that makes a person pure. And it involves as we read, it involves uh, killing or shechting, the slaughtering the heifer, um, using its blood, then burning the whole of the heifer with other ingredients, mixing it in water, and pouring the water on the person who is impure. And even then, he needs to wait until sunset, and then he is pure again. So this is basically the parasha of Para. Now, would anyone have an idea why or how is the parasha of Para connected to this time? Why do we read the parasha of Para now?
I want to say something. I don't know if I'm right, but
Go ahead. This is a Beit Midrash. A Beit Midrash is to say what you think and learn.
because well, we are close to Pesach, but um, ah, we have to take off for our homes the I forget the name the
The calf.
yeah, and maybe this is the connection. I don't know.
Hmm.
Uh, I try.
Thank you. Actually, you're absolutely right. Pesach is one of the three times when all of the people of Israel are obligated to enter the temple, right? If you don't know this, then also you need to review your knowledge of the festivals. Pesach is one of the three festivals that we are all obligated to come to the temple and circle around the temple. Actually, just a little piece of knowledge, a little anecdote. The word chag in Hebrew means a circle. A chag is not just any holiday. A chag is connected to the fact that all Jews were obligated to circle around the temple a whole circle. So that's why, for instance, we don't call Purim a Chag. Purim is not a Chag. It's just a day. It's a festive day, but it's not a Chag. Chag means the three festivals that we circle around. Lachog. And we also are obligated to bring a korban, which is called korban chagiga, an offering of chagiga, which is the offering of circling around the temple. So this is a little anecdote. So thank you, Tikva Shira. Yes, that's true. And in Pesach, it's even more important than the rest of the festivals, because on Pesach we have an obligation to bring the sacrifice of Pesach and to sacrifice it in the temple and then eat it purely. And it's an obligation to eat it as we are pure. And therefore, it is not only fitting, but it's important to remind people enough days in advance that they must start the process of purification in order to be ready to eat the Pesach. And if you remember, I don't know if you remember, but there is an explicit story in the Torah later on in the book of Devarim of a group of people who found themselves impure on Pesach, and they're coming to Moses and they're asking him, what should we do? We're impure and we can't eat the Pesach. We can't join the mitzvah of Pesach. What should we do? We don't want to lose the mitzvah. And then Moshe asks God, and God brings forth this idea of Pesach Sheni, that a month after Pesach, all of those who were impure for certain reasons that are justified reasons can give the Pesach exactly a month after the holiday of Pesach when they become pure. So para is a very, very, very important parasha, especially if you imagine the times of the temple, someone who wasn't following the calendar so closely, and all of a sudden he hears the parasha of para, and he reminds himself, oh, we need the whole family to start this process of purification because Pesach is approaching. So it's actually a very, very center part of the preparations for Pesach is the reading of this Parashat Para. Pauline Holm, you wanted to ask a question?
Yes, and I'm not. It's out of curiosity, and I'm aware that you mentioned that it's not that practiced today. But what I thought about in terms of impurity and having to deal with the dead bodies and so on, I thought about Zaka volunteers and everything that happened 1.5 years ago and how active and amazing they were in helping. And since they are ultra-Orthodox, I would assume that maybe they go up into this practice in some way. And then you said it's also really hard to get purified from touching the dead body. So I don't know if you have an answer for that, but that was my curious question.
Thank you. So first of all, I will just explain. Zaka is an organization in Israel that mostly ultra-Orthodox Jews participate in, where their job is to come to horrific scenes of violence, usually terror scenes, and collect pieces of bodies and make sure that everybody is buried according to Jewish law. And it's, of course, it's considered a huge mitzvah, and actually Zaka is very, very appreciated in Israel, also in the non-religious circles. I will just answer your question briefly. First of all, we should know that nowadays all of us are considered impure by the impure of death. And again, I won't go into the whole mechanism of how we become impure, but the fact that we were born from an impure mother means that from the moment of our birth, we are impure. So technically, there's no difference between I'm sorry I'm talking about it like that, and I'm sure Pauline, you also don't feel very comfortable, but we will say it anyway because it's Torah and we must learn, and this is a mitzvah to learn. So there's no difference between just being who we are and holding a body or a piece of a body in our hand. Technically, it's the same. We're in the same status, and actually, it's considered a huge mitzvah to bring the honor and the dignity back to a Jewish body by collecting all of it and bringing it to burial. So there's no conflict there of religion, quite the contrary. But it's true that you will. It's actually has become some kind of an interesting thing that the people of Zaka are like to learn about the laws of impurity. They have a lot of knowledge about the laws of impurity because it's something that they're dealing with. It's something that they're thinking about a lot. And so in a way, you're right. Okay, so we read the parasha, and we're already half a meeting. We're into the learning almost to the half, right? We're finishing at 8:30, right? So we won't have a lot of time to see the midrashim, but still, I think it's worthwhile to see a bit. So you see the red heifer. I hope you think it's cute. So the first, I don't know how much the previous rabbis talked about the different kinds of midrashim. But when we get to this kind of subject, which is a very halachic subject, it's the laws of purity. I will just mention. I hope I'm not repeating things that have been said a lot. That there are mainly three types of midrashim. There is one type of midrash which is midrash halacha, a midrash that tries to figure out what the law is. And usually it will go to the psukim, and let's take out the sharing because we're not reading yet. The sages go to the psukim and they say, okay, it says something that we need to do, but there are still a few gaps. There's still a few gaps. We're not sure what exactly we should do. The most classic example is Shabbat. We are obligated to keep the Shabbat, and we there are very few things of what we're not allowed to do. But what should we do? How should we keep the Shabbat? So the sages sat down and tried to find hints within the Torah. What does it mean to keep Shabbat? What does actually practically God wants us to do? And this is what we do up until today. This is how the Jewish law evolves. The sages sat and tried to find, according to very specific rules, find out the hints. What does God actually expect us to do? Because He didn't write it very in a very detailed manner in the Torah. So this is Midrash Halacha. The other kind is Midrash Agada, which is basically to read between the lines what is the purpose, what is the motive, what is the idea, what is the message behind different things that God wrote in the Torah. And this has a whole other nature to it. I don't know if you noticed. If I'm repeating something that all of you know, tell me, okay? Because I'm new here. But this is you can see it's a different style of midrash, and if you learn both styles, you can see it's very distinctive. One is very orderly. It goes word by word, explaining why this word or this letter or this repetition means that there is another detail of halacha that is expressed by by whatever's written. When you get to the Midrash Agadah, to the storytelling, to the message, to the idea, then it's usually it's a story, and it's trying to express a message, always depending on the psukim. It's a midrash, so we're getting this message from the psukim. The sages will tell us where do they see this message from the psukim, but it would be usually something that has to do with morals or with Jewish thought or with messages that are not in the psukim but could be read between the lines. The third kind of midrash is a midrash that is trying to base the Jewish ritual, okay, to try to understand what happens when, how do we read, it's like meta law. It's not talking about understanding the laws, that the specific laws, but understanding the general things of how should Judaism be structured, not in terms of specific halacha, but in terms of the general structure of Judaism. So we will see all three kinds of midrashim here in this page, as much as we will have time. So the first one is a midrash that is the third kind that I spoke about. It's like meta halacha. Okay. Does anyone want to read the first source, the first paragraph from the Yerushalmi?
I can read again.
Okay, thank you.
Rabbi Levi, in the name of Rabbi Chama, son of Hanina, said, "It would have been appropriate if the parasha of HaChodesh would come before the parasha of Parah, since the Mishkan was finished to be built by the 1st of Nisan, and the red heifer was burnt on the 2nd of Nisan. And so why is Parah first? For she invokes the purity of all the people of Israel."
Okay. So you see that here it's clear to the sages that we have HaChodesh and we have Parah. So this ritual is already engraved in the conception of the rabbis, and it's also clear to them that HaChodesh comes after Parah. That first we read Parah and then we read HaChodesh, exactly like we have nowadays. So what troubles them? Can anybody identify what troubles Rabbi Levi? Why wouldn't he say, okay, yeah, that's what we do? What trouble does he have with what we do?
Because chronologically, it should be the other way around, I assume.
Thank you. Yes, exactly. So he reads the Torah and he says, well, we have dates on these matters, and we know that first they established the Mishkan, and then they started they burnt the first red heifer on the day after the Mishkan. And if HaChodesh talks about the 1st of Nisan, so the 1st of Nisan of the very first of Nisan, they were still in Egypt. It was 14 days before getting out of Egypt. But the second year, the 1st of Nisan was the day that the Mishkan was established. So he says, okay, so if HaChodesh talks about the 1st of Nisan, and we have a chronological order of which the 1st of Nisan was on the second year, the establishment of the Mishkan, and the red heifer was made only on the 2nd of Nisan, then it should be one after the other. So why is it one before the other? And then he answers, since para is invoking the purity of all the people of Israel. In other words, the option or the opportunity to get all the people of Israel holy comes first. And that's why we read the parasha of Para before the parasha of Chodesh. Now I'll just add a technical note here. We explained that the reason why we read Parashat Para before Pesach is to remind people that they should become pure. As we saw, the process of becoming pure doesn't take a whole month or 3 weeks. So he could have read Parashat Para also later. Not sure that we could, probably we couldn't read it the Shabbat after Shabbat HaChodesh, because that would be a bit too close to Pesach. It would be only more or less exactly a week, and we need more for that. But still, it's a relevant question. What Rabbi Levi is asking, and the answer I think is so sweet, and I think it's the beginning of understanding this idea of para. We want all the people of Israel to be pure. Now, if you're thinking a bit more deeply into it, I explained before that that even in the days of the temple, the idea of purity was not as wholesome. You know, we all know that we should not be sinful. We all know that we should be keeping the holiness, right? But holiness and purity are two different things. And here we see this idea that, yes, we're not obligated to keep pure. It's not an obligation. It's not part of our obligation as Jews. But it's sort of something that God really wants us. He really wants us to keep pure. And it's important to him. And he even brings it before Parashat HaChodesh. Parashat HaChodesh is the parasha that starts the idea that we have mitzvot, right? It's the first mitzvah in the Torah, the mitzvah of Chodesh. Not exactly the first mitzvah in the Torah, but the first mitzvah that the people of Israel got as a nation. It's the mitzvah that sort of establishes the Jewish calendar. It's the mitzvah that starts the redemption out of Egypt. But still, God says, yes, but I would like you to be pure first. It's the purity of all the people of Israel. So this is the beginning of our learning today. And it's also just giving the context of Parashat Para. Let's move on to the next source. The next source is from Bamidbar Rabbah. Parashat Para is the place of Parashat Para where it's written is in the weekly parasha of Chukat, which is in the book of Bamidbar. And so most midrashim about Parashat Para will be found on that place, on Parashat Chukat. And let's read the next source. Does anybody except Louise would like to read? If not, then Louise, please.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'll do it. A certain idolater asked Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, "These actions that you perform seem to be a type of sorcery. You bring a heifer, burn it, crush it, and take its ashes. One of you becomes impure from a corpse. One sprinkles upon him 2 or 3 drops, and you say to him, 'You are purified.'" He said to him,
Let's stop here for a second.
Mhm.
Okay, so this is a very very well-known structure of a midrash, a story that is a very realistic story in the times of the temple in Israel. It's a multicultural place. Many Romans, probably some others. There is an opinion that Oved Kochavim might be some kind of a priest, also some idolater that is also a high-level idolater. And there are many stories about that sort of try to bring the Jewish thought through a discussion with someone who's not Jewish and has a different perspective in life. And here I think it's actually a thought that anyone who started thinking about the red heifer has. It's such a weird law. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And he says it very nicely. It seems like sorcery. I mean, basically the idolater says, you're worse than us. We're just idolaters. You're sorcerers. You're using some, either you're using some kind of magic or you're imagining stuff. What does it mean when you burn it and then you bring some other ingredients and then you pour three and all of a sudden he's cured. I mean, he touched a body. You connected himself to death. Now 3 drops of this weird potion and everything's fine. Most, and we will get to it very, very soon. Most laws that we have, they have some kind of an inner sense to it. Right? We know we eat matzah because we didn't have enough time when we left Egypt. So they ate only matzah, so we eat matzah. Or we are explained that we need to sit in the sukkah because when we left Egypt, we sat in Sukkot. Or even the law of impurity makes sense. You touch death, so you're impure. You understand the connection between the things. All of a sudden here you have, what's the connection between a red heifer and purity, and how does burning it solves anything, and how does the different ingredients that it says here, I don't remember the names in English, where is it? The cedar wood and the hyssop and the crimson stuff. Why that and not other things? What's the sense here? So I would say that the sages put in the mouth of this idolater actually a question that didn't belong only to idolaters. And let's see what Rabban Yochanan answers.
Okay. He said to him, "Has a spirit of insanity never entered you?" He said to him, "No." "Have you seen a person into whom a spirit of insanity has entered?" He said to him, "Yes." He said to him, "And what do you do to him?" He said to him, "We bring roots, smoke them beneath him, and sprinkle water on it, and it flees." He said to him, "Let your ears hear what you express from your mouth. The same is true of this spirit of impurity, as it is written, 'I will remove the prophets and the spirit of impurity from the land.' We sprinkle upon it the water of sprinkling, and it flees."
Okay, don't continue, please, yet. Can anybody say what was the answer, and did the answer make sense to you? Are you is this answer explaining good enough?
Well, if I continue. So
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, so what he answered, he just simply made a comparison to what the idolaters would do and say that isn't it the same as doing that? Which
I'm not
not
just
yeah, but
idolaters. Yeah, sorry. Go
or
ahead.
just anyone. But I'm not really sure that's a good enough answer for me. Honestly, it's just a comparison to what other people are doing and saying that, yeah, I'm doing this, but you're doing that. So to me, it's not really an answer to the question, but that's my opinion.
Well, I think that it makes a bit like it gives a bit more of a sane context. You know, we also know that certain roots give us some calmness, right? It's basically what he describes here. I'm not sure it's an idolater's way of this of dealing with spirit of insanity. It could be just a way to calm your mind. Getting smoke of roots could be good smells of roots, could be some kind of sense or that sort of thing. I think it does bring him more to the set. Like, if that works and you understand this works, for some reason, why won't you understand that also this works? But uh, but I still understand why you're saying it's not enough. It's mostly really bringing another. It's getting it closer to us, but it doesn't really explain.
Yeah.
Yes, Paula.
But if you think all these roots and things like that, so all our medicines today, they are coming from some ancient knowledge. So today still we have like one antidepressive is the St. John's. So many roots really work.
This is the doctor speaking. Yes.
No, it's a nurse. And then the ashes. The ashes, you put them with water, and then you have a kind of a sapon, and then you leave there even more. You can a kind of a chlor. So how much chlor you need, I don't know how was the ritual, but if you have just a drop of chlor, have you tried some time with you have chlor to take it out with water? It takes so much time. So it's really, you have two, 3 drops, and you need to do with water, do a lot of this to take it out. When you have
So
pure
you're
chlor.
saying that Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai gives him a medical answer. He says, "What do you mean?"
I think that in that time, with the knowledge for maybe these people, it was like very didactic.
So if so how do you understand his answer? Is he explaining that impurity is so real or it's like sickness? It's like a spirit of insanity. It's the same world. It's the same context. That's what you understand from Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai?
Maybe. Why, if you have a person die, for sure there is maybe sickness or maybe some bacteria or maybe something. So that's of course you need to. Yeah, today we are not touching an dead body without gloves and everything and plastic and everything. So I think it's like
Yeah.
makes
I think that
sense.
you can go that far, but you can go also one step before that and say, yeah, it works the same. Impurity is another area, but it's tangible enough to understand how when you wash and when you burn and when you add ingredients, it also gets away. We know that spirits are things that are real. And his answer maybe is we react to impurity the same way that you react to insanity, to a spirit of insanity. Maybe you won't understand it, but this is how I understand the same thing. So you might think it's stupid, but I think it's real. I remember in the times of the corona, I know that in Scandinavia it wasn't so strong as it was in Israel. But when COVID appeared, I remembered talking about it with my friends, that all of a sudden these laws of impurity became so much more real when you understand that you touch something and then your hand is infected and then you know not to put it close to, like, you'd get close to someone and all of a sudden what his condition jumps over to your condition, and it's it became much more real. All of a sudden I thought, yeah, so that helps me understand how impurity is also real. It's not just something crazy that God starts that God starts, troubling us with. It's a real thing in reality. If something is impure and I'm touching it, then I become impure. Maybe we're going that way. But let's read the next paragraph, because the next paragraph shifts everything, turns everything around. Louise, you're invited to continue if you would like.
Sure. After he left, his students said to him, you rebuffed this one with a reed. What do you say to us? He said to them, as you live, it is not the corpse that impurifies, and it is not the water that purifies. Rather, the Holy One, blessed be he, said, I instituted a statute, issued a decree. You are not permitted to violate my decree, as it is written, this is the statute of the Torah.
Okay, what is he doing here?
Well, if I may answer. So I think he's making it, I think he's making it like a chukim law that is just, we shouldn't be explaining it. It's just a law that exists that we shouldn't understand. That's my thought.
So the idea that a law is something that we should not even understand comes from this parasha. This is the source of this idea, that chok is something, as you can see, I'm just explaining, you can see that the word here in the beginning of the parasha, zot chukat haTorah. This is the ritual law that Hashem has commanded, and Louise already brings us forward a few steps. This is the word chok, according to this source, which became a very, very, very central source in Jewish thought, is that whenever we have the word chok, chukah, here it's called maybe a decree or a statute, it's a law that has no meaning. And we should not even look for a meaning. Now, before we're discussing this for a second, let's just see what happened before. Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai spoke to this idolater, right? The students of Rabbi Yochanan are present also. And when he finishes this discussion, they tell him, we saw that you were not sincere exactly about this answer. You just gave him an answer according to what, just to let him go. But we know that this is not the answer that you would have given us. So this is already very interesting, that Rabban Yochanan feels like the real answer is not something that the idolater can handle. And he plays a game which his students recognize. So to me, this is a context that is just amazing. And maybe because you're not so familiar with this genre, you don't understand how extraordinary it is. Because usually the sages are using these stories to tell us something meaningful, something important. The discussion between the non-Jew and the rabbi would give us a better understanding of Jewish thought when it's compared to how the non-Jews are seeing it. But here, this story is telling us about how it won't help to meet the non-Jewish way of thought with the Jewish way of thought. Now, I won't say that Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai is lying, is telling him just nonsense. No, there is he's saying something that has a purpose, has a meaning. But it's not the essential meaning. It's not the meaning that the students need to hear. It's only the meaning that this non-Jew has to hear. And what is the meaning, and what is the idea that the students need to hear? that the very essence of this mitzvah, the way that it is based on laws of impurity, show that it has no meaning. And this is its meaning. He says, right? It's just think of the relationship between the words of the Torah and what Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai would say. If a rabbi would have said it nowadays, his community would have thrown him away. Right? He's saying he's reading the words of the Torah and he's explaining the opposite. Not the water purifies, not the corpse impurifies, and not the water purifies. This is just an excuse. What is it an excuse for? To ask you to do what I ask you to do. To install within Jewish law the idea of chok, the idea of following God's requests without understanding. And in that sense, I think Louise's instinct not to understand was stronger than my answer. I said, yeah, well, you can understand it. The COVID helped us understand. It's maybe like a sickness, maybe not like a sickness. Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai says in a very clear way, don't try to compare. Don't even imagine that you understand how the corpse makes us impure and the water makes us pure. It doesn't go that way. Even if the Torah explains explicitly that this is the way that it goes. But from the very, once you get into it and you understand that in truth, it has no meaning. I don't know what it means to be impure. I just touched a body. What does that mean? And I don't know what it is to become pure. I just poured some water with ashes of a red heifer. Now you understand what does it mean to be God's slave. Being God's slave means not to understand everything. And I think, especially for people here, I will stop this sharing for a second. I think especially for people here who are part of a conversion program, this message is something that is, in a way, a turning point. If you understand this, you will be in a turning point in your conversion process. Because we like to understand and we like to feel like the fact that we are following God's laws gives us some kind of merit. And it does. It really does. But there's an aspect of following God which be blind. And that's why I wrote in the first line in the page a very harsh word, submissiveness. Can we be submissive towards God? Can we feel that part of our relationship, not all of our relationship, right? Because God explains many things. He explains that we should keep Shabbat in order for us to rest and for our slaves to rest. It's important. He explains what is our obligations as Jews. He has a lot of explanations. Most of the Torah is explanations. But if I'm not inside enough to cherish in my mind the feeling that whatever it is that God will ask me to do, I will do. And I will not try to understand. Not only that I will say, oh, maybe I don't understand now, but in the future, I hope I will. No, I am not expected to understand. God is, and it reminds me of something that the Rebbe of Kotsk, the big Kotzker master, he said, a God that I can understand, I don't want. I don't need a God that I can understand. Then he's not God. It's something that I can understand. If I need a God, I need a God that I cannot understand, that I cannot fully connect to, that I must understand that he is way above me. And all I can do is be submissive towards him. And then the psychological um, point that it puts us on is a very, very important thing to a religious person. To say, I'm trying to understand. Here we are in a Beit Midrash, and there is no pasuk that we're not trying to understand. And we see it in the sages. Every pasuk, they're trying to figure out what it means. Asking questions all the time, trying to get answers all the time. But in the back of our head, and in the foundations of what it is to be Jewish, we have this idea that in the end, we will never understand. And we must be slaves. We must put ourselves under and say, yes, God, we will do whatever you tell us. And I will just add that in a way, it's easier to tell it to people who are converting because they are in the process of becoming Jewish. But I can say that for people who are born Jewish, it's even more complicated. People who are born Jewish and are not yet religious, or even people who are religious, many of them lack this notion. They can't really say, yes, I'm God's slave, even if it doesn't make any sense. And the tests are times like ours, when we can't understand God, when we can say, I can't get what God wants. Is God so evil that he kills so many people? Is he so evil that he makes those horrific things happen? And the answer is this concept of chok. Chok, that we have no meaning, we can't understand, and we're required to be submissive. Now, this idea is dangerous in many ways. We Jews are not submissive in our nature, right? And we must not be submissive, definitely not towards other people, and also towards God all the time. We're required to learn and to ask. We're coming towards Pesach, the holiday of asking. And still, this is a fragment, a little part that is crucial to our Jewish identity. There is much more that I wanted to learn, but we are already a minute late. So I hope that this in itself was meaningful to you, and that you received something. If you want, I can send the rest of the page so you can learn further sources about para. I will just say very shortly that you all got a message about the annual Nordic Beit Midrash Shabbat in May. This is a Shabbat that is a highlight of all of our yearly curriculum, and it's very, very, very. You're very encouraged to join, and and for conversion process members, it's an obligatory Shabbat as well. So please sign up. And that's it. Shavua Tov. Anyone who has any questions, feel free to stay, and I would be very happy to answer. but don't feel bad if you need to leave. Shavua Tov and Shabbat Shalom, we can say from Wednesday already.
Shabbat Shalom.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Shabbat
Yeah,
Tov.
very clever evening.
Pauline, yes.
Yes, it's because I had another thing, but that's my reflection, so I'll just keep that one for myself. But the Shabbat, you said, I heard about it before, and I think because since I joined after the after the second Beit Midrash, I never got onto the mail list, so I never get communication from you.
Oi, who's your rabbi?
Yeah, from Denmark.
So contact him and he will get you in very fast.
Okay, can you tell me where this Shabbat is, which country, and when? Just so I have it in my calendar.
I'm actually
Copenhagen.
not clear about it.
Copenhagen.
23, 24 of May.
Okay,
You're in
perfect.
Copenhagen. That's
I'm
it. So
here.
you have no problem. Make sure to host someone.
Yeah, I did that 2 weeks ago as well.
Okay. Yes, Tatiana Homchik.
It's actually Daniel wants to ask something.
Hi, Natan. How you doing? I don't know if you remember, but I was at your house for a wonderful Seder 2 years ago.
Oh,
It was super nice. No, I wanted to ask you about because this thing with Chukim and that we need to just accept that we won't understand and all of these things. It feels so counterintuitive to what we're doing because we're always instructed to ask questions and to understand and to struggle to understand and all of these things. And I really can't get those two things to add up, that we need to accept the submissionness and then we're supposed to question everything all the time.
good. So this is where you need to start working on it when it doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't.
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that up.
No, I will say one thing more, okay? There is an idea, a basic idea in Judaism about worshiping from love and worshiping from fear. You probably know this this distinction. And most of us usually, at least nowadays, you guys in Scandinavia have kings and queens, but most of the world does not. And also in Scandinavia, I don't think they're very fearsome. I don't think anybody is fearful from the queen or the king of Denmark. Oh, you are? Okay. I'm sorry. I don't want to offend anyone, but we treat our worship of God usually with love. We do it because we want to. And asking questions is part of the love, right? I want to connect to what I'm obligated to. I want to understand more. The concept of yir'ah, the concept of fear of God, is equally important. And that is what keeps us in place when things are not easy. That's why I brought in the hard times that we are in right now. When you are in hard times like these, what prevents you from saying, this kind of God I do not want? I like the mitzvot, I like keeping Shabbat, but this God does horrible things. And, you know, we're just having having a small shadow of what happened in the world 80 years ago. How can you worship a God that does those things? How can you worship a God that you have questions about? And questions that usually are better than the answers. And the answer is when you connect to this idea of chok or of yir'ah, the same thing. God exists whether you like it or not. And you cannot understand everything whether you like it or not. So if you depend your connection to God on understanding, then you will lose. You will lose in the end because not everything is understandable. And when you are connected, when you have this fragment of idea, usually you sit and learn and ask and never give up on getting a good answer. And if someone gives you a bad answer, go forward and continue asking. But every Jew has to have in the back of his head this point of hope, this point of saying, yeah, after everything I'm trying to do, if I don't have the answer, I am still obligated to God because God is the real thing. This is
Can you
maybe
sum it up? Would you think it makes sense to say something like, God doesn't really have an obligation to make sense to us?
so. Here it's interesting because God obligated himself to treat us and to care for us. He writes it many times in the Torah. But in the end of the day, after all of it, you're right. He does not have an obligation. He created this world for his sake. And the Jewish thought idea of that many Jewish sources would say is we don't know that actually it's for our own good. We will discover it eventually. But I don't know if I can say that. I can just say you are his slave. I am his slave, and what nothing that he does can change my attitude towards him. He is real. He is my God, whatever happens. And this comes from the notion of chok.
Thank you for that.
There was one more hand that just left, so I assume that they gave up. Oh, Arad Yanai, no, you took off your hand.
Ken, some of the things that I want to ask or I want to remark, the guy before me say, but my one of the points was that if your way of living is to be under something that you don't understood and to obey even if you don't understood, that doesn't make you to be a nation that obey for everybody that have some authority upon you, because you already used to say, I don't ask question, I do. During the history, I don't talking about now that we are naughty,
Yeah.
but during the history, it make a nation that was under kings, under bad people, under command of other things, because we're so used to say, don't ask, do. Can it be like that? That's one thing. Second, also during the generation, but you can see it now, that many leaders, including religion leaders, taking, how to say it, preaching as they say the words of God. Preaching us, this is what God wants, that we don't go to the army. This is what God wants, that we don't work, we don't do our obligation to the other nation. We are not part of this because the Mashiach don't come. But it's not what God say. It's them interpretation. But because the community is so used to admire something strong and big by birth, they admire everybody that have the strengths and say to them, do A, B, C, and don't ask.
Yeah. So this is why I said it's dangerous. It is dangerous, and it is not the centerpiece of Judaism in any way. The centerpiece of
Where is the
Judaism
limit? That's always, where is the limit? And where it's writing, where is the limit? Because it's
Yes.
nowhere writing. Even when I ask question, rabbis, many times there is some limit. You can ask inside the square borders. Don't ask somebody that don't believe, because then we don't answer. Ask by the border, and we can give you answer by the borders. That's many times my feeling.
Yeah, so I had a rabbi who used to say that there's no such thing as a bad question, and there's no question that you can't ask. And we asked our rabbis all the questions. We never had this idea that a question is heresy. A question cannot be heresy. A question is a question. But I agree with you that there are rabbis, and I wanted to say also before that you are very right in the sense that almost all the things that is now Judaism is an interpretation of the rabbis.
Exactly.
So it
Not
is
coming from the Torah, it's coming from thinking and talking between and writing the thinking and books and whatever?
I would say it differently because I'm a very big believer in the oral Torah and in the evolution of Jewish thought and halakha. And I don't think that it's not the Torah. Actually, we have sources that say the opposite. The Torah itself says, "Ve'asita kechol asher yorucha." You should do as the rabbis of your generation are telling you. And this is an explicit pasuk in the Torah.
But we have example of very bad rabbis that
exactly.
lead the people to bad things. And that time you cannot see it, only by the history you can see if it was good or bad.
Yes,
So-
I agree with you. And exploiting religion is one of the worst things that human beings can do. And human beings, including rabbis, are actually doing it. And it's horrible each time it happens. And I would tell you, all of you, and I'm telling myself, never to do something that the rabbis told, that your rabbi, I'm not talking about the rabbis in the books, but your rabbi, the last chain of evolution of the Torah, you should not do something that the rabbi says if he can't give you a good reason for it. Because a rabbi is a human being. Here we're talking about a chok that God gave us, and it's supposed to establish a relationship between man and God, not between man and another human being, as knowledgeable and even as pure as he is. What is the borderline? It's a good question. There are areas where I don't know how to answer you. And for sure there are areas where you should use more your mind and your criticism
Common
and
sense
less
in one way.
and common sense and less your ability to be a slave and the concept of chok.
Another
But
thing
as
that
I always say to students, the fact that a certain aspect could be exploited doesn't mean that it's crucial to put it within your Jewish identity and your Jewish practice. It means that it's dangerous, and the same way that we're not afraid that we should be careful, we also should not be afraid. It's the same sense here.
Very good point.
So go ahead and be careful, but go ahead also and find the area where you can accept that God is your king, even if you can't understand exactly what he's doing, and do his mitzvot, even if you can't exactly understand why. And find the balance that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, one thing that I can also put as a sample, that you take the name of God or the action of God may be too much, because if something happen and it's work, you call it miracle. If it's not working, you say, what I can do, this is what God decide. So for me, it's almost like gambling. It's 50-50. If it's good, I always can say that's miracle God done. Doesn't happen, okay, that's the hand of God. So it's also taking the word God too much, use it as you want, in my eyes.
Arad, we didn't have many meetings together, but I'm pretty sure that this kind of discussion we already had more than once. And I think that it's a subject that you should get into and study at depth, maybe in a chavruta, one-on-one with someone you trust, because you're asking very good questions, but I don't think that the conclusions that you're getting to are the I would say the the straightforward Orthodox rabbinic answers. So of course you can choose not to follow this line of Judaism, but I think there are good answers for this. You just have to learn a bit more, and this is a longer discussion. But this
Okay.
is up to you, of course.
Good. Good going
Thank
away
you very
from hard
much. If
questions.
anyone has another question, I'm here, and if not, we will say good night.
Thank you so much, Natan. And Malmö is a poorer place without you in it. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, wow. Yeah, very nice.
It's not. It's a
Wonderful.
very rich place by itself.
Yeah, for sure. But
Yeah.
it had a great benefit of having you there.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank
much.
you. All the best. All the best.
All the best.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
לילה טוב לכולם.
Lala too. Ooh.